From the perspective of capitalist inertial thinking, disaster response, whether for natural events like hurricanes or man-made crises, has been predominantly reactive rather than preventive. In this mindset, disasters such as Hurricane Helene are not merely tragedies to be avoided, but also economic opportunities that fit within a broader cycle of destruction and redevelopment. This approach mirrors how wars often spur post-war reconstruction, leading to economic growth. Such crises are commodified, serving as engines of short-term economic expansion rather than events to be systematically prevented. The underlying capitalist logic seeks to maximize short-term profits using reactive measures to stimulate economic activity rather than investing in long-term resilience or preventive strategies. This reactive mentality is rooted in the broader framework of American capitalist ideology, often linked to social Darwinism. The survival of the fittest ethos shapes government policy, prioritizing economic recovery efforts, such as reconstruction projects over preventive measures like disaster-resistant infrastructure. This tendency can also be seen in the American healthcare industry, where major pharmaceutical companies focus on treating diseases after symptoms emerge, rather than prioritizing preventive healthcare. The shared logic behind these policies is clear. Profit is maximized when crises, whether healthcare-related or environmental, are commodified and addressed post factum. Wasteful resource consumption becomes not a failure of the system, but the fuel that drives profit. This thinking aligns closely with the Western cowboy hero ethos, a cultural narrative deeply embedded in American identity. This ethos values individual toughness, resilience, and the belief in overcoming adversity. It glorifies the act of confronting crises directly, positioning the post-disaster rebuilding process as a test of strength and perseverance. By doing so, it downplays the importance of forward-thinking prevention and reinforces a culture that valorizes reaction over proactivity. Further, this survival of the fittest philosophy shapes not only domestic policy but also US foreign policy, especially when it comes to disaster responses or national crises. Instead of addressing structural weaknesses, whether in healthcare, infrastructure, or environmental policy, the focus remains on reactive, profit-driven solutions that respond to crises as they arise. Disasters therefore become inevitable parts of a self-perpetuating cycle that allows financial and political interests to thrive, reinforcing the capitalist inclination to commodify crises. The 9/11 commemoration is a case study of how this capitalist mentality influences historical learning. Since the attacks, annual remembrance events have honored the victims and first responders, reinforcing themes of resilience and national unity. However, while these events are crucial for collective healing, they tend to emphasize emotional and patriotic narratives that can obscure the deeper, more critical lessons that could be learned. The dominant narrative focuses on America's victimhood and the heroism displayed in the aftermath, fostering a simplified good versus evil worldview. Indeed, a more nuanced historical understanding would examine the broader consequences of US policy after 9/11, such as the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which led to protracted conflict, instability in the Middle East, and the rise of groups like ISIS. Moreover, the role of US foreign interventions in creating the conditions for anti-American sentiment is often overlooked in public discourse. A narrow focus on US resilience and victimhood limits the ability to draw lessons from these broader geopolitical lessons. Skepticism arises when analyzing major events after 9/11, such as the collapse of WTC-7 or Israel's failure to prevent the Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023. Some have suggested that intelligence agencies such as the CIA or Mossad may have known about the attacks but chose not to act, perhaps for political reasons. While these suspicions are unproven, they highlight a tendency to question whether reactive policies, especially those with significant political and economic consequences, are truly in the public interest or motivated by hiding far-reaching political and religious agendas. In summary, both Israel's disaster response and US historical commemoration are deeply influenced by a Jewish-led global capitalist mentality that prioritizes reactive measures over long-term prevention. Whether through commoditizing disaster recovery or perpetuating simplified historical narratives, this approach ultimately serves to reinforce the profit-driven logic of the system, while diluting the potential for deeper reflection, prevention, and reform.